All right, I'm going to try to help you problem solve what might be going on here. So the first thing that might be happening is when you're making your chain of 10, you might be doing that chain stitch inconsistently. So here's what might happen. So what you might do is you might make your loop knot here, or your slip knot, or however you make your slip knot. Put it on your hook. And what might be happening is as you're holding your hook and you have your pinching fingers and all of that, you want the yarn to go over, turn the hook, pull through. What happens sometimes is people get a little bit creative and they try to figure out different ways to pull through. Do you see how I went the wrong way there and pulled this through? What happens is that really starts to twist the chain. So if you aren't doing the same thing over and over, if you're changing it up every single time, I can't even do it that way. What's gonna happen is your chain is gonna get really wonky, and then it's hard to tell what's going on. So here, I went back and forth. I did a couple of different ways, and now when I look at my chain, it's sort of twisting. You can still see each of the little stitches, but some of them are really weird. So that might be the first issue, is that you're switching back and forth. When you make your chain, make sure that you are keeping your hook in the front. Sorry, my cats are running around. You're putting your yarn over top. So the yarn goes from behind the hook to on top of the hook to in front of the hook. The hook turns toward you, so its little like face turns toward you and down and pulls through. And you want that to be consistent every single time. So then when you get to 10, your stitches should look very, very consistent. Okay, so that's the first thing that might be wrong. 6, 7, 8. That's 8, 9, 10. Okay, so when you get 10, and you start working your way back up and over across again, you want to make an extra stitch. Confusing, I know. Why do I have this here? So you'll have 11 stitches, and when you go back, you're going to skip the first one. That's right here. And you're going to stitch into the second one. Now there are two sides of your braid here. One side of your chain looks more like a chain. See how it has that middle stitch in it? And the other side looks like a braid. I would encourage you to stitch into the braided side because it's easier to see. So I'll zoom in a little bit here. Another thing that might be happening, so let's say you make your chain right, but when you go back and stitch it, you might start by stitching on the braided side and then accidentally halfway through turn to the chain side, and then your final product is all scrunched up and weird. So we made the chain. I turn my project, okay, and I just turn it so that way the tail is facing to the left now. And now I have to stitch into the chains all the way across, but I'm going to skip this first one. So this first loop here, this first chain, skipping that one. The one on my hook doesn't count. This one I'm skipping. This one is next. Okay, so skip the first one, put your hook into the second loop. So another thing that might be happening is you might be, see how the tip of the hook has kind of a point? That point is supposed to go right through into the loop. But what some people do is they kind of go from the back and they kind of scoop it forward. That's not right. Some people try to scoop it like this. That's confusing. Just take the end of the hook, the pointy end, poke it through the loop. Okay? Now when you're doing your single crochet, you're going to make sure to yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two. So that was the first stitch. Right here it's a bigger stitch because there's a stitch coming out of it. That loop is big. This loop here is next. So then I just take my hook, poke it through, yarn over, through one, pinching fingers are keeping all this down. Yarn over, through 2. So what might be happening, I'll show you what this looks like, is you're working along, you know where to go next, it's looking pretty good. But let's say you get halfway through and maybe your stitches are really tight or something. And let's say it gets twisted. So let's say instead of stitching right here in the braided side, let's say it accidentally gets twisted like this. And you stitch into the back, which is the other like chain looking side. I actually skipped one there, but. So if I accidentally stitch into the back, I didn't know where to go next, so I stitch into the back. What happens is my project starts to get a little bit wonky. So I'm not really sure, gonna just keep going here. I think this is next. So if you're having a hard time figuring out where to go next, what sometimes happens is when you look at this, it's like all of this is getting crazy down here. Like you can't tell what's going on. This looks even, and then it starts to get crazy. So I would undo it until I'd be like, this looks pretty good right till here. So I'd undo it, and I noticed this was getting all twisted up and crumpled up. I'd go back to where I think it looks good, and I'd start again, trying to stay in the braided side. Okay, you should let me know if this helps or not. If it doesn't, we will try to meet again and I will help you out. Okay. I mean, let's hear, I'll just get to the end here. So when you get to the end, you can count in your head, you can count 10 single crochets. So that's, make sure you're staying with 10. Now, when you get to the end, you should be able to look at your row, and it should be pretty even. You should have 10 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the top part should look like kind of like a braid. So the top part of your stitches should look kind of like a braid. Okay, and then you'd make a chain stitch on the end. One chain stitch. Then you turn the project. And now you're just going to go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we'll see if that helps.